The Juden Cave Dive Incident. On April 18, 2014, two highly experienced Chinese divers, Wang Yuan and Wang Tao, set out to break their personal depth record in Juden Cave. The cave had previously been explored to a depth of 525 feet by another diver who had left a guideline in place. Yuan and Tao's goal was to extend it by another 35 feet and reach 558 feet, but this required leaving the guideline at some point and diving blind into unexplored depths. They had already completed 15 dives in the northern entrance of the cave and were confident in their skills. Yuan even conducted a solo practice dive to 500 feet in open water. On the day of the big dive, however, Tao was recovering from illness and had skipped the practice. As they descended into Jiudan, recent rainfall had caused visibility to drop dramatically, down to just 2 meters. Still, they decided to proceed. They followed safety protocols, placing tanks with different gas mixtures at various depths, and had a support diver named Pei at the surface. Around 538 feet down, Yuan began to experience dizziness and felt he might pass out. Realizing the extreme risk, they decided to abort and return. But they encountered a nightmare. The guideline was gone. After several moments of frantic searching, they finally found it, but their panic had caused them to breathe heavily and waste valuable gas. By the time they reconnected with the line, Yuan's tank for that depth was nearly empty. He switched to a surface-level air tank, which was dangerous at depth. At 393 feet, Yuan's body began to tremble involuntarily. They still had to reach the 243-foot mark to switch tanks again. Then, Tao became stuck under a rock due to poor visibility. He wasn't even trying to free himself. Instead, he was signaling he was out of air. Yuan immediately handed over his emergency regulator. They continued their ascent, barely sharing what air they had. Near 300 feet from the surface, Yuan realized they had just 3 minutes of air left. Tao was becoming unresponsive, and Yuan had to pull him by the arm. Suddenly, Tao drifted upward and disappeared into the murk. He had lost consciousness. Yuan rushed upward and reached their next tank station, then searched for Tao, but it was too late. Rescuers recovered Tao's body the next day at 176 feet. Yuan suffered from severe decompression sickness and was hospitalized, but survived. The Santa Rosa Blue Hole Tragedy. In March 2016, a 10-person team of expert divers explored the reopened tunnels of the Blue Hole in Santa Rosa, New Mexico. Among them were Navy veteran Shane Thompson and seasoned cave diver Mike Young. On the final day, they planned a dive to 165 feet, then descend even further into a tight, unexplored area. Shane was supposed to stop at the 165-foot opening. Mike would go beyond. But as soon as Mike disappeared from view, Shane followed. He entered a tight corridor filled with stirred-up silt, obscuring all visibility. Shane's rebreather unit got stuck on an overhead rock. As he struggled, Mike suddenly encountered him at 195 feet, face to face. Mike helped free Shane and told him to retreat. Shane tried, but in his panic, he kicked wildly, tangled in the guideline, and lost it. Meanwhile, Mike was navigating blindly through tight spots, assuming Shane was ahead. But when he finally realized Shane was behind him, it was too late. He backtracked and found Shane wedged in a crack, lifeless. Mike barely escaped, freezing and injured. The next day, he returned to retrieve Shane's body alone, navigating the maze of rock passages again. The Wayanapanapa Cave Drowning. On January 29, 2017, 32-year-old Gregory Wilhelm and 3 friends visited Wayanapanapa State Park in Maui. At the popular cave pool, Gregory convinced one male friend to join him in exploring deeper into the cave. He used a smartphone in a plastic bag as a flashlight. They swam into a dark tunnel and dove under a boulder. The passage led deeper than expected. Gregory's friend panicked and returned to the surface without saying a word, leaving Gregory behind. Gregory continued exploring, but soon became lost in the dark. He found a small air pocket to breathe in, but the rising tide and shifting currents made the situation worse. Realizing he couldn't go back the way he came, he swam forward. Meanwhile, his friend resurfaced but couldn't find Gregory. The 2 women they'd come with went into the cave and found him disoriented. He tried diving back in to help, using their screams to navigate in the dark. On a 3rd dive, he spotted Gregory's phone flashlight, but no Gregory. They called for rescue. Gregory was found drowned 75 feet inside the cave. If you're enjoying these stories, hit like, subscribe, and leave a comment telling us which dive story shocked you most, or what you'd like us to cover next.